Janie picked up our son and her assistant before heading into the hotel for a business meeting. Someone snapped a photo of the three of them, which quickly started trending on Twitter. I called to confront her, but she impatiently hung up on me. Where else am I supposed to take clients if not to a hotel? To our home? I didn't ask you to pick me up, so stop being unreasonable. While I was busy trying to get the post taken down, I received a call from the emergency center 2 hours later. By the time I arrived, our son's body was already cold. He was still clutching his company ID badge tightly, which bore the assistant's name. I broke down sobbing uncontrollably, unable to reach Janie as she had blocked my number. After completing the hospital paperwork, I finally received a call from her. Her voice was filled with anger, her patience clearly exhausted. Did you take our son? Why didn't you tell me? Don't you know we've all been waiting for him to bring the contract? Bring him here immediately. She hung up and blocked my number again before I could respond. I let out a cold laugh as I stared at the rejected call notification on my phone. I can bring in clients, and I can also cut off your escape routes. Ding! Story Shots reminds you to click the subscribe button at the bottom right corner to read the full novel. After dealing with my son's funeral arrangements, all my emotions and breakdowns turned to ashes along with his body. Then I took out my phone and sent a message to that old friend. Getting a divorce. No need to set me up anymore. 6 years of marriage. I never thought it would end in such a disastrous situation. The love that all our classmates had high hopes for inevitably walked into the grave of marriage. The passionate feelings between two people gradually died in the daily grind of life. I had a lawyer draft a divorce agreement and brought it straight home. I didn't even have the mood to deal with what was trending on Twitter. It wouldn't matter to me anymore anyway. I sat on the sofa waiting for her for 5 hours until Janie King finally came through the door, supported by Henry Smith. The drunken haze in her eyes cleared completely when she saw me. She abruptly shook off Henry's hand and snapped at me with a stern face. Where's the contract I told you about? Where did you send it? Do you know how much trouble your son has caused me? I didn't know how much trouble he had caused her. I only knew that my son was hit by a car and died at the company entrance while trying to get her contract. My hand clenched tightly under my sleeve, the anger in my chest about to explode. Janie took a deep breath, suppressing the fury in her heart. She walked in on her high heels and collapsed onto the sofa. Seeing that I didn't react, she frowned and turned to look at me. Where's my hangover medicine? What are you sitting there waiting for? Waiting for me to find it myself. As soon as she finished speaking, Henry hurriedly stepped forward and crouched down in front of her knees, gently placing his hands on her thighs. He spoke softly and caringly. Ms. King, where's the medicine? I'll get it for you. Don't trouble Calvin. He looks like he hasn't slept all night worrying about you. But unexpectedly, Janie slapped his hands away and yelled at me angrily. I told you to go. If it weren't for your son, would the deal have fallen through? Where's the boy? Where did you take him? Tell him to get out here. If I don't teach him where he went wrong today, I'm not Janie King. She didn't get to hear where our son was, only received the divorce agreement I threw in her face. Sign it. My son doesn't need you to teach him a lesson. A mom who only cares about her own pleasure, he doesn't need. Janie picked up the papers that had fallen on her and stared at them for a long while. The next second, she suddenly sat up straight and forcefully tore the agreement into pieces, scattering them in the air. What did your son tell you? Calvin, what are you going mad about? I'm out there doing business, not selling my body. Why are you and your son making such a fuss? It's already not easy for a woman to do business. I have to take care of things outside and inside. Are you trying to work me to death? Now that the company has just gone public, you're asking for a divorce. Why don't you just ask me to die? Can't you see what's trending on Twitter? If you divorce me now, won't that confirm the rumors? I couldn't believe that all she was thinking about was the company's interests. The woman in front of me could no longer overlap with the memory of my first love. Just before I lost control of my emotions, Henry took out a gift box for men from his bag and placed it in front of me. Calvin, this is a gift that Ms. King specially picked for you yesterday. Don't be angry. She's doing this for the family. As he spoke, I noticed the watch on his wrist. It was the same brand as the gift box. In an instant, anger surged to my head, and I picked up the box and threw it 10 meters away. The contents fell out onto the floor. Janie was stunned by the loud noise and looked at me in disbelief. Calvin, what's wrong with you today? What did the boy tell you? Can you trust what a child says? How long are you going to make a fuss about last night's Twitter trend? When I looked up, my gaze was ice cold. She still thought it was just about the Twitter trend. She didn't even care about our son's death. Do I need to say anything more? Don't I have eyes? Can't I see for myself? Janie, do you think that because I love you, you can make a fool of me? Do you think my son is blocking your path to wealth? Sign the papers now, and we'll never appear in front of you again. You can be free of us for the rest of your life. Henry quickly ran in front of me, reaching out to grab my arm. I swatted his hand away. Calvin, I'm giving you one chance to rephrase what you just said. Do you know what you're saying? Under Janie's furious glare, I turned to pick up my packed luggage and stood up. Seeing this, her gaze grew even colder. Fine, fine, fine. You've already packed, haven't you? Get out. Don't let me see you ever again. Once you walk out that door today, don't ever come back. This wasn't the first time she had said such things. She thought it was like before, just a cold war because of jealousy. She assumed that after a night's sleep, she'd wake up to find me waiting with a prepared meal, ending the Cold War without needing an apology. But I knew better. This was the last time. Janie and I had been in love for 10 years, married for 6. Before our marriage, we were the perfect couple in everyone's eyes. We studied together, took exams together, and entered university together. That love, where we encouraged each other and moved forward side by side, truly existed. Back then, for the 6 a.m. study session, she would wake up at 5 to get ready and buy me breakfast, just so we could walk to school together. She would pretend to bump into me outside my house, and we'd go to school together. At that time, few girls dared to pursue boys actively, but she was always special. She took the initiative to ask the teacher to make us desk mates. To be closer to me, she promised to improve her grades by 10 places. The teacher hesitated but agreed. From then on, she started studying day and night. When the exam results came out, her dramatic improvement immediately dispelled the teacher's concerns about puppy love. We became the best study partners, comrades in the exam hall. We became the envy of all our schoolmates. Before our final big exam, she stood beneath my house, looking at me earnestly in the streetlight. I know my family's situation isn't the best, but I'll use every ounce of strength to stand tall beside you. Calvin, wait for me. My young heart couldn't help but be moved by those words. I fell in love with her, keeping it secret from my family. Right after graduation, I brought her to meet my parents. For the first time in my life, I defied my parents' wishes to marry her. At our wedding, not a single person from my family attended. She looked at me with sincere eyes and softly said, "From now on, I'm your family. No matter what, I'll always be here. One day, your parents will accept me standing proudly by your side." Afterwards, it was indeed as she said, giving me unprecedented warmth and love, until the company started to grow, and she became busier, until Henry's appearance, until we had our first fierce argument because of Henry. Love is a non-renewable resource. Once a heart develops cracks because of someone, it's hard to mend. The year our son was born was the most difficult time for the company. I tried several times to persuade her to step back from the company affairs, offering to find someone to manage things for her. But she stubbornly insisted, working in the business world right up until she went into labor. On the day of her due date, she was still at a business dinner. When I called, Henry answered, "Cal, Mrs. Williams is in a business meeting. I can pass on any urgent messages if you'd like." At that moment, I suddenly couldn't see the meaning behind her busyness. Was it to be with me, or for her own ambitions? That night, the words left unsaid were swallowed back forever. As the call ended, my bank card showed a transaction record. The payment was made to a chain hotel. That was the first time Janie King was caught on camera with Henry Smith at a hotel. I checked out of the hospital on the day I gave birth to my child. They blackmailed me with photos, demanding £100,000. I gritted my teeth and paid. Now I realized that I was wrong from the very beginning. That was just the first step, with countless pains waiting for me to endure. On the day I lost my son, I finally woke up from this dream. Back then, I was alone at the hospital, welcoming my son into this world. In the end, I was alone again, sending him away. After leaving home, I couldn't face my parents. I could only rent a place to live with my son's ashes. I asked a friend to help me make an appointment at the funeral home. I bought some simple groceries and stayed at home for 2 days without going out. On the third day, when it was time for the appointment, I prepared to go to the funeral home. Suddenly, there was a violent knocking on the door. As soon as I turned the doorknob, I was knocked to the floor by an enormous force. The urn with my son's ashes nearly slipped from my hands. I got up quickly and checked it, sighing in relief when I saw it was intact. Janie's voice, filled with anger, rang out. "Did you take our son away? Tell him to come out right now." I frowned deeply as I watched several bodyguards kick open the doors and search the house. After a moment, they gathered back in the living room, shaking their heads at Janie. In an instant, her face was consumed by rage. Her eyes, fixed on me, were red with anger. She screamed, "Where is our son?" Henry Smith entered at this moment. Seeing the situation, he rushed to hold Janie back. "Miss King, please calm down. Don't fight with Calvin. You've been married for so many years." Before he could finish, I struggled to my feet and spat in his face. I wanted to throw a punch but couldn't free my hands. "Save your fake kindness. If it weren't for you, we wouldn't have come to this." As I finished speaking, Janie, her eyes bloodshot, grabbed my short hair forcefully. My face contorted in pain, but she seemed not to care at all as she spoke coldly. "Just because you're jealous, you manipulated our son into doing such a thing, and now you're playing innocent in front of me? Have I been too good to you?" I clenched my jaw tightly, my pale chin trembling uncontrollably. "Whatever my son did is none of your business. You have no right to talk about him. Janie, marrying you against my family's wishes is the biggest regret of my life. I must have been blind." Originally, I had planned to send her a message today, asking her to join me as we laid our son to rest. Now I felt it was unnecessary. In her eyes, this son never existed. Hearing my words, the anger in Janie's eyes intensified. The next second, she raised her hand high, ready to slap my face. As she was about to strike, Henry grabbed her arm. He shook his head disapprovingly. "Children don't understand contracts. He probably didn't know what he was destroying. It probably wasn't intentional. I'll rewrite the contract when I get back tonight." After listening, Janie's chest heaved violently with anger. One contract might not be important, but I can't stand by and watch him grow up wrong. A multi-million-pound contract, and he just tears it up. He's only this young. What will he be like when he grows up? Hearing this, my eyes widened instantly, straining so hard they almost bled. "Janie, have you gone mad? How could our son possibly tear up your contract? Today, you'd rather believe this bastard than your own son." The thought that my son was gone and still being framed by her nearly burned away my sanity with anger. Hearing my words, Janie forcefully broke free from Henry's grasp and slapped me hard across the face. That slap finally woke me up. Only then did I see my wife for who she truly was. The young girl I once knew had died the day our company was founded. She shouted angrily, "You encouraged our son to go to the shredder late at night and destroy the final contract for this project. Do you know how long we've worked on this? No wonder he disappeared when I asked him to fetch the contract. He was too ashamed to face me." I glared at her, my voice colder than ever before. "Janie, what proof do you have? You can't slander my son like this." But she angrily retorted. "The security guard saw him with his own eyes. What more do you want to say? The guard doesn't even know your son. Are you suggesting a stranger is trying to frame him? Stop wasting my time. Bring him out now." I want to ask him myself what he was thinking. I let out a cold laugh at her words. That day, my son died at the company's doorstep without even stepping inside. Was the guard claiming to have seen a ghost? Before I could explain, Henry softly interjected, "Calvin, don't cover for the boy. Ms. King is furious. Just let him come out and apologize. There's no lasting grudge between father and son. I know you don't like me, but this project is everyone's hard work. You can't be so selfish." Hearing this, I nearly popped my eyes out of their sockets. The next second, I used all my strength to try and break free from the bodyguards holding me. But it was like an egg trying to crack a stone, utterly futile. I could only curse angrily under my breath. "Stop putting on an act in front of me. Who do you think you are? When the company was just starting, you were nowhere to be found. Don't make me sick." As I struggled, the jar in my jacket was exposed. Henry's eyes lit up instantly. He pointed at the jar and urgently said to Janie, "Ms. King, are those the shredded contract papers in there? Why don't we open it and check?" Hearing his words, I froze completely, every drop of blood in my body turning to ice. "No, it's not that. You can't touch it. Don't touch it." Ignoring my desperate struggles, Janie turned and gave the bodyguards a look. Then, two of them pinned me down. One stood in front of me, reaching out to snatch the jar from my jacket. I resisted with what little strength I had left, gradually losing ground. My eyes filled with despair as helpless tears streamed down my face. Seeing the bodyguard struggling to pull it out, Janie forcefully kicked my shoulder with her high heel. The pain made me loosen my grip. Due to the momentum, the jar flew straight out of the bodyguard's hand. It smashed hard against the wall in front of me. In that instant, my breath stopped, and I lost all ability to think. I could only stare at the gray-white powder on the floor, my mouth open but unable to make a sound. Janie glanced at it, then turned back impatiently. "I'm giving you one last chance. Don't make me call the police." But no matter what she said, I couldn't respond. My eyes were fixed on the gray-white patch in the corner. She frowned and walked over, her high heels stepping on the ashes. She reached down and grabbed a handful. "What is this? It's not the contract." Then, annoyed, she forcefully scattered what she held onto the floor. She walked back, wiping her hand on one of the bodyguards. While glaring at me, she took out her phone and called the private investigator she had hired. "Call the police now. Calvin has kidnapped my son. I want to know where my son is within the hour." There was a long silence on the other end of the line before a stammering voice finally spoke. "Ms. King, your son's body has already been cremated. On the night you and Mr. Smith were discussing business. He was hit by a car on the road and died at the company's entrance." Janie's grip on her mobile suddenly loosened, and it crashed to the floor against her body. After a moment, she came to her senses. She bent down, snatched up the phone, and shouted into it, "Who's dead? Who did you say was hit by a car? The security guard just said he saw my son, and now you're saying he's dead? Did the guard see a ghost? Did Calvin put you up to this?" As she finished speaking, she glared at me with bloodshot eyes. But I seemed oblivious, staring blankly at my son's ashes. Janie spoke through gritted teeth. "You're fired. Go to Calvin for your wages." The call was abruptly ended. As she was about to stride out, Henry gently reminded her, "Ms. King, perhaps the child was afraid of upsetting you, so he colluded with the private investigator. If you go like this, he..." As he spoke, Henry's face showed unnatural panic. In the past, a single word from him would have been enough to dispel Janie's doubts. But this time, his words were impatiently interrupted. "If he dares to joke about this, I'll make sure he really dies today." Hearing this, I laughed maniacally, out of control. I was like a madman in the throes of a fit. "Henry, you're capable of feeling guilty? You dare to do it but fear the truth coming out." Countless times he had played tricks and games between Janie and me, and I had always swallowed my pride for the sake of our child. Now it was time for him to reap what he had sown. As Janie left, she stationed 2 bodyguards on either side of my room door. afraid I might leave before she returned. I knelt on the floor, crawling to the corner, trembling as I reached out to carefully clean the ashes stuck to the wall. Tears welled up in my eyes, but fearing they might fall on the ashes, I hurriedly wiped them away with my arm. By afternoon, I had finally managed to collect them all. Exhausted, I stared blankly at the urn on the floor, my mind empty. After a long while, a ringtone disturbed my thoughts. I shakily got up and sat on the sofa, answering the call. It was the business partner I had introduced to Janie, also an old friend of mine. Our families were old acquaintances. If I hadn't ended up with Janie, I might have been his business partner now. I heard he just lounged at home enjoying life after getting married, traveling around the country when he had nothing to do. He had moved his company's business abroad, and I had contacted him to open up a bigger market for Janie. When he heard of my predicament, he agreed without hesitation. I just never imagined this would be the outcome on the night of signing the contract. Now, hearing the familiar yet strange greeting, my nose stung and a bitter smile played on my lips. Have you really decided to give up the cooperation? I've looked into it, and although signing a contract with Janie doesn't bring us much benefit, it could help you open up the international market. I heard from family that you've had it tough these years. Hearing him mention my parents, I couldn't help but interject. You've seen my mum and dad? From the day I married Janie, I never heard news of them again. I thought they had given up on their useless son. I could only get news about home from the media, seeing father growing older day by day, with no one to take over the company. I was full of guilt, but too ashamed to go home. The voice on the other end sighed before continuing. Yes, I took my wife and kids back for Christmas. I wanted to catch up with you then. That's when I found out you weren't living at home anymore. When they mentioned you, their voices choked up a bit. I could tell they were very worried about you. I thanked him and hung up the phone. Looking down at my parents' phone numbers on the screen, tears fell uncontrollably. I lit one cigarette after another, my hands shaking slightly. For years, it seemed I'd been rebelling against my family in my heart, desperately trying to prove my choices weren't wrong. After my son was born, I juggled caring for him with drumming up business for Janie. I enjoyed the connections my parents provided, yet stubbornly attributed success to my own abilities. Later, Janie would tell everyone about our perfect marriage. She'd say meeting me was her greatest luck. But only I knew the truth. The photos of her sneaking into hotels with other men were piling up on my phone. This marriage had long been dead in all but name. My stubbornness, my pride, they'd ruined me, and worse, they'd ruined my son. I slowly walked to the urn, wiping its surface clean with a tissue. Then I sent messages to several major business partners of the company. Many of them had only agreed to help because of my parents' influence. Now I was going home, and wouldn't trouble them anymore. Just as I picked up the urn, the door was violently kicked open from outside by a security guard. Janie rushed to my side, her face contorted with rage, while the guard grabbed my wrist. I hurriedly clutched the urn tighter to my chest. She noticed my movement, her eyes fixed on the object in my hands. After a moment, she looked at me with a mixture of caution and suspicion. When I spoke, my voice was devoid of emotion, filled only with sorrow. Yes, this is your son. As if stung by my words, her eyes suddenly turned red with fury. She stood on tiptoes, both hands gripping my neck as she shouted, "Impossible! You changed the time on the death certificate at the hospital, didn't you?" The security guard said he saw my son. Her grip tightened, and I could barely breathe. A ringtone broke the silence. After a moment's hesitation, she answered, panting heavily. When she hung up, her eyes were filled with hatred, shock, and anger as she looked at me. "You canceled the company's partnerships? Calvin, have you gone bloody mad? You know how hard I've worked to get where I am today. What right do you have to take everything from me? What right?" She screamed in my face, spittle flying everywhere. Her hands moved from my neck to my shoulders, shaking me violently. I held the urn tightly, a victorious smile spreading across my face. All that remained in my heart was the satisfaction of revenge. Janie, does it hurt to lose the most important thing in your life? Your pain isn't even a fraction of what I felt losing our son. I put you on that pedestal, and I can tear you down just as easily. You and your lover picked the wrong person to cross. As I finished speaking, the color drained from her face, her lips trembling uncontrollably. But I knew she wasn't upset about our son. She hated that I had destroyed the business empire she had so carefully built. After a moment, she let go of me, her arms falling limply to her sides. I spoke coldly. Sign the papers. We were married once. Don't make me force you. For the first time, I saw tears in Janie's eyes. She spoke shakily. I'm sorry. I know you're heartbroken about our son. I never thought anything would happen to him. I just wanted to toughen him up while he was young. After all, the company would be his one day. I cut her off coldly before she could finish. Stop acting. You'll have another son with Henry. By then, you won't even remember our son's name. She looked stunned. What son? Why are you bringing up Henry? I searched her eyes but couldn't find any trace of deception. She truly didn't know that Henry had secretly sent me her pregnancy report. What does he have to do with this? I was the one who sent our son out that day. If you want to blame someone, blame me. Don't drag him into this. He was just doing his job. I know you have prejudices against Henry, but you can't deny his workability. I wearily met her stubborn gaze, seeming to see my former self in her eyes. Janie King, desperately trying to defend her relationship with him in front of me, looked like a pathetic clown. The next second, I couldn't help but let out a cold laugh. Janie, you don't actually think you're being loyal, do you? Using my son's death to pave the way for your lover. Even if the car accident was a coincidence, he's been planning to frame my son for a long time. Where's the security guard from that day? I want to confront him face to face. Only then did Janie remember the security guard's false testimony. She hurriedly called the company's logistics department. Send me the contact information for the oldest security guard at the company. I saw the anger in her eyes instantly extinguished, replaced by helplessness. After hanging up, she stared at me blankly. That security guard resigned. I nodded faintly. I guessed as much. How come Henry let you come out alone today? Janie was taken aback by my question. He said he was going to redraft the contract. As soon as the words left her mouth, her eyes widened. I spoke mockingly. I've already canceled the cooperation. Why is he still working on the contract? For practice? No wonder you chose him as your assistant. I admire his work ability and enthusiasm. Intense unease suddenly surged in her eyes. She lowered her head and started trying to contact Henry's number. She seemed to be trying to explain to me. I didn't know. I was busy at the hospital checking our son's death certificate. He just said something casually. I didn't hear clearly. She dialed again and again, but no one answered. The color drained from Janie's face. She could barely stand, leaning against the cabinet by the door. I'll investigate. Let's go send off our son first. Didn't you book a place? The next second, she gently reached out her hand to me, intending to lead me out. I forcefully shook her off. I said coldly, I don't need the kindness of a murderer. My son doesn't want to see you either. Get out. Seeing my icy face, she became uncharacteristically flustered. I'll investigate that matter. Even if the security guard has resigned, I'll do everything I can to find his whereabouts. He's my son too. I won't let him be wrongly accused. Her regretful words reached my ears, mockingly laughable. Only after our son died did she remember he was her son too. What use was that now? Finding out the truth is what you should do. Don't think that will make me forgive you. You don't deserve it. As I finished speaking, she swayed slightly. She turned and left, taking her bodyguard with her. She left the car keys for me on the cabinet. I frowned and threw them to the doorway. Then I took a taxi to the funeral home. The staff there had already sent me countless messages. They said if I didn't hurry, the deposit wouldn't be refunded and the spot would be given to someone else. This world is terrifyingly realistic. Meanwhile, Janie rushed to the company's surveillance room, ordering everyone to search for the CCTV footage from the night of the incident. But they only saw the image of our son being hit and thrown heavily to the ground outside the company's main entrance. She was so angry her eyes turned red and her whole body trembled. As for the security guard's testimony about our son shredding documents, they couldn't find any footage. But the system showed that 10 minutes of surveillance footage from the security passage door was missing the next day. The files in between had been copied and taken away. Janie immediately slammed the table in fury. Find it! He couldn't have thrown it far. When he left later, his hands were empty. Go! Search all the company's rubbish bins. No one leaves work until you find the missing surveillance files. In the end, only half of the people she called went to search the rubbish bins. Most were busy dealing with the cancellation of cooperation with business partners. The company was paralyzed by this issue, and the most important projects were all based on my personal connections. Janie King sent people everywhere to give gifts, but couldn't even get a glance from the business partners. Under the continuous blows, she sat dejectedly in her chair, looking as if she had aged 10 years. Finally, the USB drive appeared in the rubbish bin under Henry Smith's desk. As the files were imported into the computer, Janie carefully watched the scenes on the screen. There was only a moment of Henry whispering to that security guard. Nothing else. Who was on duty that day? Why didn't they know about such a serious incident? What about the logistics department? Get the person in charge here. How on earth did they hire people? The security guard beside her timidly spoke up. Mr. Smith has always been in charge of the company's security. Don't you remember? You assigned it to him yourself in a meeting. Hearing this, Janie clenched her fists, her memory pulled back to that day. At that time, I had rushed to the company with my child after receiving an anonymous message to confront Janie. But it wasn't photos of them entering a hotel together, it was bedroom photos. The company's security let me in, and I walked straight into the meeting room while she was in a meeting. That day, I ruined the business deal she had worked so hard to secure. Afterwards, Janie handed over all the company's security to Henry. Only he wouldn't take me seriously. Thinking of this, she clearly understood. This was all just a carefully planned conspiracy. She couldn't get through to Henry's phone and paced back and forth in the monitoring room. Before she could figure out what to do, the company's finance department came to her. Henry had signed a contract before he left, draining all the company's liquid assets. The company was now just an empty shell. As the words fell, Janie collapsed into her chair. An unprecedented despair swept over her. But everything she experienced, I had anticipated. I watched my son's burial alone, my eyes filled with regret. I didn't dare take photos or tell my parents the news. I didn't even dare give my son a proper funeral. I had never felt so useless before. Now the only thing I could do was to make those who harmed my son pay for their actions. After Janie left the company, she came to pick me up at the entrance of the funeral home. The two of us rushed to the police station together. She reported the case, demanding the arrest of that security guard, suspecting him of stealing the company's trade secrets, and Henry of absconding with company funds. After explaining the situation to the police, I looked at her anxious face and sneered. What's the matter? Isn't his child in your belly? Would he leave his own child fatherless? Once you rebuild the company, he'll come back. Janie irritably ran her hands through her hair. I told you there's really nothing between us. At least there couldn't be a child he always used. So that's what she meant by nothing, meaning there was no skin-to-skin contact. A wave of nausea suddenly swept over me, and I almost vomited on the spot. After I recovered, I said, I've checked Henry's report. It's real. The hospital should have the information of the child's father on file. You should go and see. Maybe you'll have an unexpected discovery. The police split into two teams. One tracked down the security guard's hometown based on the information from when he signed the contract. When they arrived, he was busy packing his bags. He was so frightened he could barely speak coherently. On the way, the police had already conducted the first round of questioning. But he remained tight-lipped about Henry's whereabouts. He didn't know what economic crime was, nor did he know what was illegal. All he knew was that he needed to make money for his daughter's medical treatment. The other team went to the maternity hospital. A pregnant woman's records would accompany her until delivery. Before long, both teams returned to the police station. When all the information was pieced together, a terrifying truth began to emerge. The security guard and Henry were from the same small town. They were fellow townsmen. Initially, he was over the age limit, but it was because of Henry's connections that he managed to get into the company. But that was all he said. No matter what else the police asked, he kept mentioning his daughter's illness. Janie, listening outside, heard that he refused to disclose more and was so angry she wanted to go in and argue with him right there. I stopped him with a firm grip, my eyes fixed on the security guard inside. I said coldly, "Even in a small town, people know to come here for their daughter's treatment. Some have succeeded, yet forgotten their own family." With that, I turned and entered the interrogation room, leaving Janie King outside, her brow furrowing deeper. Finally, her hands fell limp at her sides. Once inside, I looked into the old man's cloudy eyes and said, "If it's for your granddaughter, would you be willing to confess?" For a moment, the old man's eyes lit up. Then they dimmed again. "What are you talking about? This old man doesn't understand. You're covering up for your son-in-law Henry Smith's crime." Following the lead I provided, the police found another property under his name. When they arrived, Henry Smith was just helping a strange woman out the door. The woman was unsteady on her feet, relying on a crutch. She was the security guard's daughter. After being brought back, he shouted angrily, "Why are you arresting me? Let me go. I'm not the one who ran someone over." He struggled all the way, losing his strength the moment he saw Janie King. His face was filled with panic and guilt, but there was no trace of remorse. Janie King glanced at me. "How did you know he was?" "He drove your car to this address. I saw the information on the dashcam. An old man who would travel so far for his daughter wouldn't leave her alone at home. Someone too poor to afford treatment wouldn't do bad things on their own. Without someone teaching them, it would be difficult." With that, I turned and entered the police station. Seeing the old security guard's cowering figure, Henry Smith exploded in anger. "What are you doing framing me? Why can't you take responsibility for your own actions? I have a family to support. Can't you understand what I'm saying?" I said coldly, "Don't waste your breath. A man capable of causing someone's death. How could he entrust his daughter to you and take the blame himself?" After I said this, Henry Smith's eyes were almost burning with hatred as he looked at me. I smiled indifferently. The police found that the funds in his account hadn't been transferred yet. Hearing this, I prepared to leave, but Henry Smith called out from behind, "I just wanted to be a bit happier." "What's wrong with that? Why are you so fixated on me? Why do you get to have a happy family and a perfect wife, while I have to spend the rest of my life with a cripple?" I didn't answer him, just lifted my foot to leave. His idea of a perfect marriage had long since rotted and stunk. When it comes to feelings, you can fool others but not yourself. Janie King volunteered to drive me back. I looked up at her, the woman before me with eyes full of greed. "I won't be able to help your company anymore, Janie. This road has been too smooth for you, so smooth that you've forgotten your past struggles, forgotten how hard it was to get here." Janie swallowed, took a deep breath and said, "I understand. That's not what I meant. The divorce papers, I'll give them to you later. I'll keep running the company. If I can save it, could you?" "No, never again. Unless our son could come back to life. Otherwise, I won't even give her a glance for the rest of my life." Looking at her for a moment brings back the horrific image of our son's death. After contacting the landlord to terminate the lease, I packed my bags and took a taxi back to my parents' villa. My hand froze in midair as I was about to press the doorbell, unable to bring myself to do it. After a moment, I furrowed my brow and mustered up the courage. But the door opened from the inside. My mother's face was full of love, her eyes brimming with sympathy. "Calvin's back? Must have been tough? Mum's made your favorite dishes. Been waiting for you for ages." With that, She reached out to take my luggage. Once inside, I learned that the old friend had told them everything about my situation. My parents deliberately avoided mentioning my son in front of me, and I tacitly went along with it. After dinner, I called out to my father as he was about to leave. "Dad, I'll start helping you at the company tomorrow. I haven't wasted these years. You can put me to the test." His footsteps paused on the stairs, his silhouette looking somewhat weathered. After a while, he spoke in a hoarse voice. "All right, I'll make the arrangements." My nose tingled, and I couldn't help but tear up. I want to spend the rest of my life repaying what I owe my parents.